Just as a tiny bit of background, Cool Choices is a nonprofit. We work with businesses and communities and local units of government to accelerate their momentum on sustainability. So I think a lot about what it takes to build momentum over time around sustainability to kind of get to that ideal place we want to get here, which is, you know, you can think of it as kind of a domino sort of scenario that what we want is for each of our accomplishments to set the stage for the next bigger sustainability win. And that sounds really good on paper. It's actually pretty complicated in this field, partly because every time you're really successful, you make it harder for you to succeed on the next project. So when you reduce electric usage by 4%, it becomes trickier to find the next 4%. Similarly with water, we'll talk later about waste and how it's that last piece that's really, really difficult to meet. So there's a way that building momentum isn't trivial to do here. Very often though, and most of you have this level of kind of experience with this, where we start is with technology. We start with, often people start with very clear win projects like lighting projects, where you can say, we installed this new lighting system and it paid for itself in this much time, paid for itself at 6 months, now we're saving this much money annually. It's a really compelling story to start with. And the great thing about those stories, particularly I think around lighting, is that they make really clear how real the savings are. I think about projects I'm familiar with, a library project where the savings essentially started paying for the project. The project was generating positive benefits before the lighting installation was done. So midway through, they'd already saved enough electricity to cover the entire cost of the lighting upgrade. In situations like that, it becomes, the story there is pretty compelling. We were burning money, and now we've stopped. That story can carry a lot of weight to get you the support you need for the next project. And that's particularly true for a time, but it's not always true forever. And part of what I really encourage you to think about here is how some sustainability projects are more motivating than others. That some of the stories are more compelling, that some projects are more visible, some things appeal to people in a more innate way than other things, some technologies are just sexier than other technologies. So all of that plays into how compelling a story you can tell and how much momentum it builds forward. My own background is I spent about 20 years in traditional utility-based energy efficiency programs. And we used to talk about how, you know, people were super excited about photovoltaic systems in comparison to kind of basic energy efficiency. That PV systems were kind of the chocolate cake on the table while we were telling people to eat their broccoli and insulate their walls. And it was a real struggle. You have to understand what motivates people and what doesn't motivate people. And ultimately, you're dealing with a variety of different kinds of people inside your organization and outside your organization who care about different kinds of benefits. And part of what I really want you to think about today is how you leverage all of those different interests in what you do. And in fact, I have a second poll about this. So I'm gonna ask all of you, when you talk about sustainability benefits, what are you most often talking about? What are the benefits you're doing? So if you want to just notch off there on the poll, we'll sort of see where people are coming out on this. And it looks like about half of you have voted, so I'm going to give you just another minute to get some more folks to add in the things that they're most often talking about when they're talking about benefits. Okay, so we've got about 3/4 of you voting. So I'll close it there and share those results. And so we'll kind of talk through some of these. I'm intrigued, though, that a chunk of you said other. Feel free in the question box or in the chat box. I think you have access to either. You could. Terrific. Someone already did this. So someone noted, just wanted to say that I usually focus on energy savings, waste reduction when I talk about benefits. Okay, so a little bit more specific than the kind of cost savings that I was doing there. That's helpful to see. So let's sort of talk through this then. What kinds of things people care about. So obviously there's those financial benefits. There's the cost savings that come from, we're saving 3 million kilowatt hours a year with this project. We've reduced our water usage per widget produced by 10%, and all of those things that you can turn into dollars that certainly appeal to folks in the finance piece of the organization. I think part of what you always want to think about, though, is that those aren't the only things that people are interested in. One of the things, even on the financial side, that for me was fascinating to really understand is that I've worked with a number of companies now where plant managers will talk about when they're competing for resources with other plants in a big organization across the country or across the globe. If their pitch is this project will save X amount of dollars, that pitch often loses to another pitch that this project will increase our sales. Even if the math favors the reducing expenses, we're all drawn to that kind of increasing sales piece. So a thing I encourage you to think about is, are there projects you're doing that have some impact on sales? Is there a way you can talk about a benefit to the sales side of the operation? And the best example of this I can give you is some probably decade-old research now about that came out of Walmart, actually. When Walmart started installing skylights in stores, one of the things they saw in store-over-store comparisons was there were increased sales in the stores with skylights. When customers had natural daylight on them while they were shopping, they bought more. That was a pretty powerful thing for the organization to think about as another benefit and a way to think about how they increase momentum around these things. So thinking about, are there sales opportunities? Kind of the other end of the continuum maybe is thinking about the environmental benefits. So are you talking about how when you reduce water consumption, what that means in terms of local lakes, local water supply kind of thing? Are you having that conversation about we're reducing our energy usage and that's reducing particulates in the air? Are there constituencies that will be a really powerful message too? Internal to your organization, I encourage you to always think about how the things you're doing are making it more pleasant for occupants to be in those buildings, in those facilities. Is the new variable speed drive reducing noise on the factory floor? Are temperatures more consistent with the new controls? And occupant comfort is really important because it ties to productivity. So if the things you're doing are making staff more productive, if you're making it easier for them to do the right things, for example, that's really important, and you want to tell that story because, again, that creates other constituencies who are excited about what the sustainability arm of the organization is delivering. On a kind of broader related note there, of course, the thing that we pay a lot of attention to is that employee perspective. Are you sharing these stories in a way that facilitates recruitment, retention, employee pride, engagement? And here, let me give you a sense of how important this is. So recently saw an article looking at the companies, the U.S. companies, nope, this would be global, with the greatest following on LinkedIn. So one of the things that happens on the social media platform LinkedIn is people follow companies, particularly if it's a company they're interested in working for. Perhaps it's not a big surprise that two of the companies with the largest number of followers are Apple and Google. So, you know, it's the tech sector, it's big, it's sexy. Lots of folks are following those companies in terms of job opportunities. The third company on that list is Unilever. Unilever, who makes shampoo and soap, tea, kind of a variety of things that definitely enhance my life, but aren't really on the same scale as a sexy new phone or some new search algorithm or autonomous cars or whatever it is Google's developing today. Unilever is there, though, because they have a really clear commitment to sustainability, and because 80% of millennials want to work for an organization with a clear commitment to sustainability where they can be part of that commitment. So there's this hunger among employees for the opportunity to be part of these things. And I think part of what you want to think about is how your sustainability efforts help your organization talk to people about those opportunities. So are you telling stories in a way that HR can use them in examples when they're at a job fair? That they can say to people, oh, if you're interested in a company that's really committed to reducing its energy usage and doing innovative things around water and waste, we've got a tremendous number of things going on. These are the ways employees can get involved. Do they have your story in a way that they can tell it and use it to leverage their work? And again, part of your aim for doing all of this, for planting these stories in all these places, is to build more momentum for your work, to build support for your work, to build enthusiasm and open resource coffers to the next round of things you want to do. Ultimately, what I'm pushing you to think about is how you celebrate your sustainability victories, both internally and externally, to kind of maximize support for the next big thing. And let's talk about both of those. So sometimes, particularly, we do a lot of work in the Midwest, and in the Midwest, we see companies doing amazing things and being pretty reticent about talking about them publicly because everything's not perfect yet. And I really encourage people to be sharing more externally. And one of the reasons I encourage them is because it's really motivating. So occasionally I'll talk to a sustainability lead who tells me that he feels like their organization's efforts have kind of stalled, that it's hard to get the next thing happening. And one of the strategies I often suggest is that he look for an opportunity for them to get some kind of recognition for what they've already done. And the reason I do that is because there's something really powerful that happens to a human being when you put them on a stage and in front of an audience of their peers, they're congratulated for what they've done. So that sustainability lead, what I tell him he needs to do is create an opportunity for his boss or his boss's boss or as high up that chain as he can get for that person to accept an award about what they've done. Because when that happens, what will come of that is that C-suite person standing there on stage accepting congratulations for the work that her organization's done to date becomes motivated to think about what they're going to do next in this realm. It's not just what did we do, you know, oh good, we got an award for what we did. What happens to each of us there is we have a very strong human need to be consistent. And so if you're all recognizing me for the amazing water saving project we did, even standing there accepting the award, I'm starting to think about, wow, what are we going to do next to top this? How do I keep getting these accolades? How do I prove that we deserve more of these accolades? So there's a really important motivating thing that happens from that external recognition that you don't want to discount. The internal is incredibly important too. What you want is you want people talking about all of the things you're doing to be sustainable with each other, with their friends, at the break room. All of that is really, really powerful. And it's powerful in a couple of ways. First, it can help generate new ideas for you. And again, as you go forward, as you get deeper and deeper into your impacts, those new ideas become really important. Let me give you a couple of sort of examples of how important they are. So experts are now estimating that in the generation of high performance office buildings we're today building, the buildings that are coming up under new building codes and being super efficient, 55%, more than half of the energy usage of those buildings is plug load, is the decisions individuals across the organization are making at their desks, in the kitchens. You need a way to affect that going forward. You need to build momentum so you can be there forward. Another angle on that, a recent study in Minnesota indicated that the typical cubicle now uses about as much electricity as a residential refrigerator. So when you think of that sort of vision of the office of cubicles like this, really it's an office of refrigerators. And, you know, part of that's about how many monitors people have on their desk, how big they are, lots of other kinds of pieces there, including those space heaters we all want to get rid of. But these are the opportunities that you need to engage forward. The other kind of good example I always think about here is around waste. You know, a lot of organizations are committing to zero landfill. And what we see is that there's a first piece of that that's sort of what I would call the infrastructure waste that organizations have been really creative and really successful addressing. It's the waste that employees generate in the cafeteria and at their desks that becomes really difficult to get their arms around. And the way you're going to get your arms around any of that is by creating a culture where everyone is part of the solution, is by telling sustainability stories in a way that they're magic and exciting to a variety of people across the organization, so they want to be part of this. Now, in our organization, you know, we use an online platform to do that. So when we work with companies, we engage them using our online platform where essentially folks get points for their sustainable actions over the course of a 6-week program. It creates a fun way for people to coach each other, to trash talk each other, to sort of move to a more collective place. Ultimately, what we're all aiming for in this, though, I always think is best described by one of our past clients who talked about an entire employee population moving in the same direction. The best way for you to continually accelerate your sustainability efforts is to have a culture where everyone understands the goals and sees them as part of their daily lives, where they're as committed to these goals as you are. That's the ideal here. And that's where I think you want to head. So I'm going to open it up now to questions. You've got that little box on the side of your screen. If it's not open, you can hit the orange arrow and you'll have a spot where you can put in a question, and we'll respond to those as best I can. So there's a question about how you engage diverse audiences. That the finance people sort of care about the sustainability outcomes, but other people don't seem that interested. I really do think it's about telling these stories in different ways, and sometimes thinking about what's the most compelling story to tell right now. What story will grab people's attention? And that's hard because it's not always the story that's compelling to you. So think about that in a kind of what grabs other people. Okay, so a question about whether we look at whether we see evidence of spillover links. So if people change one behavior, is it likely they'll take another? So the literature on this is really interesting. It sort of cuts both ways. So if we frame actions inappropriately, so if we say this is the thing we need you to do, we just need, my favorite example of this is when I was in energy efficiency, we used to do a Change a Light campaign where the slogan was, change a light, change the world. When people heard that slogan, some of them pretty logically, I think now in retrospect, concluded that if they just changed one light bulb, they were done. They didn't need to do other things because we told them, change a light, change the world. You were changing the world with that one light bulb. That's not what we want. We do want spillover. So the way to get spillover is to, as much as possible, recognize people for what they're doing in a way that facilitates them doing more. So certainly what we do through our program is we're saying on day one, oh, Linda, that's great that you used your reusable bags at the grocery store. What are you going to do tomorrow to be sustainable? Here's some more options. And we're constantly kind of giving people ways to step up to the next level. As people start to think about themselves as someone who does sustainable things, there are tremendous spillover opportunities. We've had instances, so typically our platform is oriented towards simple things people can do in their day-to-day lives at work and home. But we've had participants trade in their SUVs for a hybrid vehicle because they were so motivated and thinking about themselves in a different way now. I'm a person who doesn't do these things. So there's a way that there's a lot of spillover if you frame things right. So someone's saying they work in a large office building with about 1,000 employees. They don't have as big of milestones as the example. How do you build energy for the small things like composting or getting people to bike to work or even plug load? So a key piece of this is to talk about things in aggregate, not in an individual way. So when you say to folks, hey, if you turn off your computer monitor when you leave your desk, we can save, I'm going to make up a number, $8 a year on that. That's super not motivating. People are like, bah, we wasted $8 last year on this thing, it doesn't matter. What you want to do is you want to talk about aggregate impact. So if everyone in the organization was composting, it would reduce our waste by 1/3, which is the equivalent of X, which is the equivalent of 8 train cars of garbage. Give people a really strong visual of, oh, look at what we've reduced. That's amazing. I feel really, really compelled by that. We talk about results on our platform in aggregate dollars across everything everyone's doing. The annualized impact is X. So instead of saying to you, this one thing you did will save $4 a year, I say all the things all of you are doing in this organization will save $200,000 a year. That's way more compelling, way more empowering than the little piece. So that's a really important thing to think about, is how you do that in an aggregate way where it motivates rather than in the kind of disparate way that it's easy to, you know, people are tremendously busy. They've got a lot of things going on in their head. If it sounds like the impact of what they can do is trivial, they're not going to do it. You've got to think about how you make that not be trivial. So a question about, so as the employees get more committed, the organizations can still be constrained by the board or by sustainability budgets, and how do we break free of those constraints? And I think that's a piece of this building momentum, that as it's certainly, you want that groundswell at the employee level, but you also want leadership seeing what those benefits are. So we have less turnover now that we talk more about sustainability. Turnover used to cost us X a year. Now it costs us a fraction of that. I think about an organization we worked with where the sustainability lead, after doing a renewable energy project which led to increased applications at their facility. So more people were applying to work there because this seemed like a cool place now. Seemed like a forward-thinking place. He actually built into his cost-benefit analysis the benefit he was generating for the HR team. That's the kind of thinking that we need to show that this isn't just an expenditure over here in sustainability to reduce operating costs. This is a way to expand our employee base, to increase sales, to increase our reputation in the community. There are all these other benefits that need to be taken into account when we're thinking about the cost. So a question about sort of in those big buildings, how do you start having communications? How do you start engaging people? So I will start by saying that I don't think posters are very effective. That hanging up signs telling folks that they should engage are typically not going to get you very much. And I would challenge you to think about for yourself how many other posters you're noticing when you walk around, kind of thing. Often in organizations where there hasn't historically been very much momentum, a place to start might be something more like brown bags. So can you do a lunch and learn even once a quarter about what the company's doing around sustainability and how it affects kind of ongoing operations or something? Can you and maybe people bring their own lunch to it, but you start having a dialogue and you start identifying people in the broader organization who are interested, who can carry some of the messages. And you can have the advantage of something like a brown bag is you can have a dialogue there. You can talk about projects from a variety of perspectives and see what captures people's attention. Where are they noticing the benefits of these things? What things can you leverage back to them? That I think is an important piece of that, is where I would suggest probably starting that. Watching the time, I am going to have us, I think, stop there. We commit to keeping these short today we had lots of questions. I love that. If you have more questions, my email is up there on the screen. Feel free to reach out to me. We're glad to talk to you and share some ideas and strategize about what else you can do to accelerate momentum in your organization, building on your past successes. Again, thanks for joining me today, and have a great rest of your day.